Redditors who have dated celebrities, how'd it go? Story 1. She was famous in another country. We met when she was visiting friends in my country. I met her at a group outing and didn't know who she was. I asked her out and she said yes because she thought I was funny. I didn't clue in that she was famous until our third date, and only because, on a few occasions, expats from her country recognized her out in public. She was really hesitant to explain, but when she finally did, I was just like, oh, that's cool. I didn't make a big deal out of it, which in retrospect I think preserved our relationship. I've never showed her off as my celebrity girlfriend because, well, I'm not a fan, haha. I think if I did, that would have been a deal breaker. She has a weird relationship with fame. She didn't enjoy being famous at all. To her, fame was the price she had to pay to do the thing that she loved and was really good at. When we were together in my country, we could be more normal, occasionally being approached by fans notwithstanding. The couple times I visited her in her country, we spent most of our time in the hotel or in places where her privacy could be guaranteed. Eventually, she just quietly withdrew from the public eye and moved to my country. We've been married 7 years now, and I'm constantly on the lookout for signs that mommy's talents got passed on to either or both of our kids, haha. Edit. She gave me permission to share some more info. Honestly, I kinda expected us to fall apart, so this was a happy surprise to me too, haha. None of my friends or family thought it would last because she's Chinese and I'm not. I'm from Canada. My Mandarin was functional at the time and so was her English, so we communicated through a Chinglish hybrid and Google Translate. My Mandarin has improved a lot because of her, and her English has improved because of our kids. She was an actress on Jiangsu TV. Her big break, and the thing that fans approach her for most often even today, was having one of the starring roles on an extremely popular TV drama back in the early 2010s. One of the things she hated about fame was how people who met her in public would talk to her as if she was actually that character. After that show, she continued working with relative success, but nothing ever as big as that one show. I imagine it's like the guy who played Joffrey on Game of Thrones today if he only kept acting. A lot of people in the comments talked about celebrities being self-centered and catered to, and to be honest, she was the same way to an extent. I asked her once why she would choose me over her career, and she said that she knew she had a quick temper, but when she would get angry or frustrated, I would try to cheer her up, which apparently no one did. They would all just duck and hide, even her parents, but not give in to her, which apparently also no one did, which her best friend told her she needed in life. She hadn't intended to leave China or the entertainment industry forever. Her original plan was to get married, get Canadian resident status, take a break for a year or two, and then go back to work. But during those couple of years, I guess she got used to the peace and quiet and just never went back. Once we had our first child, she put everything into being a mom. As time has gone by, people make less and less of a fuss about her former career. Sometimes, she'll meet someone new and they might be like, holy shit, you're so and so from whatever, but that's about it. After 7 years away and 2 kids, she looks different from how she used to. She's still beautiful though. At least I think so, smiley face. And she still has acting and singing in her. Story time at our house is fucking epic, let me tell ya, haha. Reply. Waited for when the relationship ended but it didn't. Wholesome as fuck. Story 2. Once I found myself in one of those one-seater restrooms in a Starbucks in Manhattan right in front of the ABC studios. I think it was like 74th Street in Columbus. Anyway, I had run in because I had to take a giant shit and it took a couple of minutes to get it all, but it ended up to be a big mountainous triple flusher and it was rank. By the time I got out there was a line for the restroom and Rosie O'Donnell was in the front of the line. I smiled at her because I recognized her and she smiled back, I think. Then she went in there. This isn't at all like dating a celebrity, but it's a pretty intimate experience, I think. Reply. The reverse of this scenario happened to me with Billy Bob Thornton once in 2009 at Austin Studios during the TFHOF Awards show. They had extra restroom trailers outside of the building, so I went out there and stood in line. Got to the front of the line, Billy Bob walks out. We make eye contact, smile, I walk in, the smell hits. Dude crop dusted my soul that night. Story 3. I sat next to Natalie Portman on a plane once. We talked all about designer handbags, and then were there for each other through some bad turbulence. She was already taken, and I'm gay, but it was still a relationship I'll never forget. Reply. I opened a gate for her in a dog run once. She was super grateful and asked me if I was an actor. I said no. Reply 2. When Nat asks you if you're an actor after you just did something nice for her, you say, yes, and then take the part she offers you FFS. Story 4. I dated a Hollywood actor. He took me to a Hollywood party, where all the other celebrities were. He left with a Hollywood actress. I met enough celebrities that night not to care, although I do like to say they all got to meet me, did get invited to more Hollywood parties and was blown away that it was all the same people at every single party. Reply. Oh man, even Hollywood celebrities are stuck in boring roots. Story 5. D-lister and most insecure and narcissistic person I know. I really did care about him, but I couldn't handle the lack of accountability and them always having to be right or the center of attention. Too much. I will stick to my non-celebs. Story 6. It was surreal with very little private time for him to be himself. I knew him from high school before fame, so he liked being himself around me. Ultimately, he became very controlling, no one tells them no, and upset, so would drop my life for his. The social and financial power imbalance is always present. Reply. Yep, just commented something similar. It's not as fantastic or easy as most would like to believe it is, that's for sure. Story 7. I met Hugh Jackman on the streets of New York, drinking a Pilsner out of a paper bag and eating a slice of pizza. I was on my way to see the Violent Femmes at Roseland Ballroom. I totally asked him to come with me. He said no, but I took it as a win. It's not every day you get to ask out Hugh Jackman. Edited to add. I was the one drinking beer and eating pizza. Hugh was just out for a stroll. And it was the last show ever at the Roseland Ballroom. Reply. Reminds me of the times I saw Keanu in Soho. I worked on Broome and walked down to Grand for lunch with coworkers. Twice that week, Keanu was standing on the corner of Grand and Lafayette eating lunch from a bag, and we thought it was odd. Nobody seemed to notice him at all. A month or so later, the sad Keanu memes showed up. Reply 2. My dad told me a story the other day about how he walked into a bar in Seattle and ordered a beer and they gave it to him for free, which he thought was odd but didn't question it, 'cause hey, free beer. Then he looked around the bar and it was significantly more empty than usual, and saw Keanu Reeves over on one side of the room practicing lines for a movie. Shortly after, someone came over to tell my pa that the craft services table is over there. He helped himself to a sandwich and a couple more free beers while he watched Keanu practicing his lines. On his way out, he saw River Phoenix out front of the bar looking like he was completely bombed out of his brain. Turned out they were shooting scenes for My Own Private Idaho around there, and the bar was rented out for the cast and crew. My pa just walked in looking like he was supposed to be there, so no one questioned it. Hence the free beers and craft services, lol. Story 8. Not a celebrity, but a real deal model. I was in college and this woman was in my class. She kind of had an exotic, funky look to her and laughed at my jokes. So we hung out. Me? I was a total nerd, so it never occurred to me that there was anything between us. I mean, here she was, tall, lean, elegant, perfect face, and kind of an edgy look to her. Me? Glasses, and I was skinny enough that I could have been a trellis for varicose veins. So imagine my surprise when eventually she asked me out. On our third date, I went over to her place. As it turns out, she had lived in Europe for 3 years and, had done some modeling. She moved home when her mom died to be with her dad and figured she'd finish her degree. So she asked if I'd like to see her. thinking it would be the usual catalog stuff. Nope. Elle, Italian Vogue, and a number of other fashion mags. About 10 total. I was dating a cover girl and didn't even realize it. And to her credit, she had never really mentioned it. Always low-keyed it. However, I didn't really tell anyone, because I figured she'd dump me sooner and later and didn't want to be embarrassed. Finally, one Saturday night, she asked my Sunday plans. When I mentioned my family was going to have the usual Sunday dinner, she asked, "Well, what time?" Well. So I mentioned that a girl I was dating was going to come by for dinner. My two brothers and my sister kind of ribbed me about it, and my mom was thrilled that I was actually dating someone. I actually had a dating life, but I kept it completely from my family because, quite frankly, my brothers and my sister could be snide assholes. So the doorbell rang, I opened it, and she strolled in. Black leather pants and jacket, some edgy-looking blouse, and her hair kind of with a funky early 80s Pat Benatar look. I did mention it was the 80s, right? You could have heard a pin drop. Dinner went on for a couple of hours and I left with her. The next day, my oldest brother said, "So there's a side to you we don't know about, isn't there?" It lasted about 6 months. But, truthfully, dating her was kind of exhausting after a while, because she was so insecure about what she looked like, what she ate. Dinner was always kind of an ordeal. Nobody could believe that I was the one who let the relationship slide. Story 9. I dated an actor who played the lead in an Oscar-nominated movie. He was charming at first but turned out to be the most self-centered and insecure person I've known. He needed constant attention and praise. He would call me at least 5 times a day to talk about himself. He constantly wanted me to confirm his dick was huge. It wasn't, complained about not having a prettier face, tore himself down as an actor but got angry if I didn't contradict him, etc., etc. Utterly draining, like an energy vampire or something. I called it quits after 1 month. Story 10. My friend's friend hooked up with John Mayer after one of his concerts in his tour bus. She said he was a horn dog and was into butt sex. Reply. Worked in the industry. Can confirm this story from 2 others that have hooked up with him. Both said his penis was purple. Not sure what to make of that. Reply 2. Story time. At Berkeley, John Mayer has the nickname Jerkin John. The story goes that his roommate walked out of the dorm room to go to class and came back 3 minutes later because he forgot some books. In those 3 minutes, John had stripped nude and was laying in the middle of the floor just pounding it as hard and fast as he could. Years later, everyone calls him Jerkin John and they make sure that freshmen know to pass on the story. Story 11. R.J. Mitty, Walt Jr. from Breaking Bad, hit on my daughter at a poker tournament and bought her a drink. She had to gently tell him she was waiting for her hubby who was in the tournament. She said he was super nice and laid back. Lol. Reply. Dodged a bullet. Who'd want to be constantly eating breakfast? Once a day is enough for me. Story 12. We met in a random club when he showed up for a surprise performance. I happened to be dancing on stage and was told to keep dancing as all but 1 or 2 other girls were kicked off the stage. We danced on stage for a couple of songs after his performance and then asked me to give him a ride to the studio. He was really down to earth and signed a bunch of autographs. The weekend after he left town, he flew me to his hometown and we spent like 3 days together, which ended in me meeting his mom and sisters. Before I left, he asked me to stay with him, quit my job, and commit to a relationship. I would have to travel with him non-stop as he was promoting a new album. I liked him, but couldn't hand over my financial security for a guy that I barely knew. I tried to slow things down and he took it super personal. Then he wrote a song about me, which made me sound like a bitch, and it played on the radio constantly for the next few months. I know he wrote it about me because he left a voicemail of recording it in studio. Edit. OMG Reddit sleuths. Yes, I cheated on my husband, then boyfriend, with a celebrity in my early 20s. Congrats, you did it. Lives are messy and it didn't seem relevant to the question at hand. As for it sounding like a movie, I literally don't know what to tell you. This isn't even my most interesting anecdote. Story 13. He was an NHL player. We dated for about 8 months and actually were engaged. I broke it off and give back the ring when I realized being a hockey wife would make me go insane in the long run. Reply. My cousin played in NHL for 11 years. Married his high school girlfriend, brunette, which is very rare for hockey wives. Didn't drink alcohol. Somehow was well liked on his teams. Story 14. Not me but a coworker's sister-in-law. She hooked up with TJ Miller in the late-o before he hit Hollywood and was still a traveling stand-up comic. My coworker, his wife, and sister-in-law all went to a comedy show where TJ hooked up with the Sill and they all went back to their house to presumably drink and hang where he spent the night. In the morning they found the front door open and the cookies the wife had cooked the night before were gone. He wouldn't shut up about it for years until he finally saw the guy and realized it was the same person. TLDR, TJ Miller is an alleged cookie thief. OP reply. TJ Miller stealing cookies was not what I expected when I posted this question. Story 15. Well, he wasn't a celebrity when I dated him. I got pregnant and he was just talking to somebody about moving to the West Coast and playing in their band. He didn't want me to have the kid but I did anyway and told him I wouldn't bother him. I knew it would screw him up because almost 30 years ago they would make guys get a job and working gigs playing guitar wasn't going to cut it. So I never went for child support and we only rarely spoke after that. Child turned 15 I think and something went on with my husband and I had to file child support for the first time. That's when I found out that he was a full-blown rock star. He pulled the whole "that's not my kid" thing. We got the DNA test, 100% you're the father. Kid got to know him in between his concert tours. He's definitely a different person now and I'm kind of glad I didn't know that person way back when. Not exactly what you asked but that's my celebrity story. Story 16. About 8 years ago, I met Corey Feldman at a Comic-Con. He proceeded to ask me out. I respectfully declined. Then he tried to get me to go to a haunted house with him. I'm much younger than he is, haha. My parents say I could have been with a D-list celebrity every time we watch a movie he was in. Story 17. I dated, and am still close friends with, a retired model. In his early career, he was a model for A&F, was on the bags, huge posters in the stores, the whole early 2000s shebang. He's real nice to look at, especially now in his 30s. He's such a lamb, the sweetest man on the planet, thinks the best of others, genuinely kind-hearted, and he is completely ignorant to being fawned over. He just thinks all people are really nice. He gets hit on left and right and doesn't even clock it. My theory is that he's one of those rare people who has been attractive since birth, so he doesn't even realize he's playing on God mode instead of hard mode like the rest of us. We didn't make it as partners long term because massaging his ego is a full-time job. He's cripplingly insecure, needs a constant cheerleader to amp him up and compliment his appearance, workout, etc. As his bestie, an occasional friend with benefits when we are in the same city, I can bust his balls and tell him about himself in a way he would never be able to handle from a romantic partner. Far superior, I'd say. Story 18. It was fairly difficult. For us it was too much traveling on her obligation for work, me not being able to accompany her because of my obligation for work. She was faithful, she never cheated, but constant attempts from coworkers and others to get her. But she was in my opinion very respectful that way. For us through other issues not being able to do holidays or plan them, just normal things couples do. But it was otherwise a good relationship, we actually parted as friends. Stay in contact once in a while. After we dated I was married for 23 years and her and my wife were friendly. Never disrespectful to our marriage, she ended up actually marrying and divorcing more than once. But she's been in a relationship for the last 12 years and happy. He's in the industry. And they're actually pretty famous couple, not superstars but definitely recognized. Story 19. Courtney Love flirted with me at a bar in Indianapolis in 1995. The following pathetic story is as close as I can come to relevantly participating in this thread. It was late night after her concert, Hole, at a nearby arena. She stared daggers at me when I walked in, like I thought she somehow hated me? It was a little odd, but she was a little drunk, so whatever. She walked up to me at the bar with a couple of very large guys who I assume were security. She loudly ordered me a drink, and made a big deal of standing very close to me and touching my shoulder and chest repeatedly. I kind of fumbled through the conversation as the experience was pretty jarring overall. At some point she told me that I reminded her of the character Linus from Charlie Brown. I dunno what that meant, but eventually I kind of weaseled my way to the bathroom and then just left. This was at the now defunct The Patio nightclub in Broad Ripple. Courtney Love was a lot more attractive than you'd think in real life, and also a lot shorter than she looks like on TV. Not really short, but she definitely did not look 5 feet 9 inches like Google says she is. Story 20. I was working as a waiter in a fancy restaurant in a Napa winery, paying my way through college. She and her extended family of 10 came in for dinner and drinks, with her extremely wealthy grandfather at the head of the table for his 70th birthday dinner. I'd served him before and knew to have his favorite ashtray for his cigar waiting at his seat. At the end of the night, he tipped me extremely well and complimented my intelligence and work ethic profusely. After I told him it was always a pleasure and wished him and his family an excellent night, he turned to his granddaughter and said something like, "Those boys you've been casting aside have nothing on a young man like this. In fact, you should take him to the ball next week, since you haven't chosen a date. He already knows how to dress and more about wine than that Humphrey who's been making eyes at you." Old man was very used to getting what he wanted. "Okay, Grandpa," she smiled and then looked at me with apologetic eyes. Her father gave me his card, thanked me for being a sport about all this, and then the young lady and I introduced each other briefly and exchanged personal cards. It surprised her that I had one. The ball was a yacht club thing filled with people who could afford yachts bigger than my dorm building and amazing food. She knew that she had never had a normal life because both of her parents were wealthy former celebrities and her grandparents were just wealthy. We had nothing in common except for a taste for chocolate and attraction to women. I got dropped off at the dorms in a limo, wearing a tux and drunk on the limo's single malt. Next time I served her grandfather, I assured him that she'd find the right person for her. She came out of the closet a few years later and is now happily married. Her IMDb filmography has 12 credits before that ball and 31 after. I sometimes see her on screen. Hey, stop. You're pretty cool. Subscribe for more. Yo!